Welcome to another exciting episode of the Belonging Podcast by Elev8 Villages. I'm your host, Melissa Kaye, and I'm excited today for our guest to be joining us. He has spent 5 years moving around through countries and cultures as a digital nomad. When I first got to know him, I was really fascinated with how he learned to turn unfamiliar places into places rich with relationship. I'm really excited to explore what living all over the world has taught him about home, connection, and belonging. So let me introduce to you Wesley Warshawer. Wesley, welcome to the Belonging Podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Congrats on your documentary, by the way. It was excellent.
Thank you so much. So Wesley, you spent 5 years without a permanent home. Take me into a moment when you realized that the place that was unfamiliar began to feel like you belonged, or that you belonged there.
So like you said, I was a digital nomad for 5 years, and I was bouncing around from different places, about 18 months in the United States and 3 and a bit years in Latin America and in Africa. And to answer your question, sometimes you get there, you don't know anybody there, you don't know where to go, you don't know anything about the place. But once you start kind of knowing, where to, like I can imagine that I didn't know this city and now I know it's always the second left back to my Airbnb, something like that. Okay, I'm starting to get this place. The other thing is, like, I would always try to find a favorite restaurant or a favorite bakery or a favorite, I would join a gym, something like that. And once you started to recognize people, hey, I've seen this person before, I'm gonna wave. Then I really felt like, okay, like I can be here. I'm not just a stranger here.
Yeah, I like that you just repeatedly would go to the same place. I think like when you're on vacation and you travel, you like try to see something different every day, but intentionally going to the same place over and over, you would just start seeing familiar faces. So brilliant. How did you decide, like, did somebody recommend doing that, or did you just figure, like, it makes sense?
No one recommended it. I came up with this idea of the bubble when I was kind of young. I was in college, and I'll just tell a quick story. I joined a volleyball team when I was in college in intramurals. I've never played volleyball before, and somehow, in a random coincidence, I'm paired with my volleyball partner is a Japanese foreign exchange student, and we're at the University of Arizona. We're playing volleyball. We take a break to get some water, and we just start talking. And he asked me something about an upcoming holiday called Halloween. And he said, I don't know what that is. And so I'm explaining kind of what it is. Okay, we're going back and forth. And just coincidentally, I had just heard a knock-knock joke about Halloween. And I said, we're talking about Halloween, and it just came to my mind randomly. And I said, hey, do you want to hear a joke about Halloween? And he said, sure. And I said, all right. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
He just sat in silence, and he waited 5 or 10 seconds and goes, I don't get the joke. And that sounds so silly, but that moment completely changed my entire life, because I realized what a bubble is. He had no idea what I was talking about, because if you grew up in a place where knock-knock jokes was not a concept, then that would make absolutely no sense. Of course, knock, knock, what kind of joke is that? And so I was probably 18 years old when this happened, and it started me on this process of understanding that we're all in a bubble. And bubbles, it's not bad to be in a bubble. I fully admit I'm in a bubble, and everyone should. But the question is, when you meet someone from a different bubble, should you be judgmental against them when they don't know something, when they mispronounce something, even when they're coming across as rude? They might be a rude person, but it might just be they don't understand the culture of the bubble. They don't understand the vocab, the terminology. So whenever I had a chance, my goal was to get outside my bubble, because I just thought, whenever I am outside my bubble or meeting someone of a different bubble, that's when I really grow as a person. When you stay inside the comfort of your own bubble, you don't really learn much. You don't really grow as a person. But I know you've traveled a lot too. I'm sure you have similar stories. But for me, it was just from 18, I'm going to do everything I can to leave my bubble, because A, that's where I learn, but B, you get a lot of funny stories and it's a lot of fun.
I love this concept of the bubble. We're going to probably circle that a lot today. Can the bubbles like merge where they're overlapping, or do both bubbles have to burst and then you kind of create a new bubble with the two of you or the group you're with? How does that work? Help me. Let's think through that.
How does the analogy work? Yeah. Some people have said, when I say it's time to get outside your bubble, I've heard people say, no, don't get outside your bubble, expand your bubble. I can see it kind of both ways. You can kind of think of it like a muscle, and when you're lifting weights, you kind of rip and destroy your muscles, and then it grows back a little bit bigger. That's kind of like a bubble. You're in a small bubble when you're isolated in your hometown and you only know a few people. And as you meet other bubbles, you collide with other bubbles, you have friction with other bubbles, then you slowly grow and your bubble expands. And so that's another way to think of the metaphor.
I love that. What are some examples beyond a knock-knock joke that you might be able to tell us some stories about?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit, but I was judgmental for sure. I grew up in southern Arizona, 40 minutes from the border of Mexico. And so, we eat Mexican food. That's what we all eat here. And I remember as a kid being at a Mexican restaurant. I must have been 10, 12, young. I was young. And I overheard someone at another table ordering food. And he said something, I'd like a burrito and I'd like a flour tortilla. And as a Tucsonan, that is like the most absurd thing. And I remember laughing, I was laughing at him. I was mean. I was rude. I remember as a kid, someone from another state was trying to make conversation. I was probably in middle school, something. And they asked me, what sports do you play? And they asked me if I was on the ski team. And
You're from Arizona.
I laughed at them. I had never seen snow. And so, of course there's no snow. And I was mean maybe, I was a kid, but how could someone not know that? And it's when you travel and you're in someone else's bubble and the tables are completely turned and now it's your turn to make those social faux pas, those ignorant statements that are not born of malice. It's not because they're mean or dumb people or anything like that, but you just don't know things that are outside your bubble. And it wasn't until that happened to me where I made a mistake and people laughed at me and I thought, maybe I'm a little too tough on the tortilla guy.
Maybe just a little. I think it is really easy to have the worldview you have and forget that other people have different worldviews. What were some of the things that traveling abroad taught you about your home here?
Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Sometimes you appreciate things and sometimes you feel embarrassed about things at home. I remember I lived in Korea for 2 years, South Korea for 2 years. And I mean, this is an embarrassing story a bit, but I remember I had a tutor, a Korean tutor, and she was teaching me how to speak Korean. And we were studying late one day and we're at a coffee shop or something. It's 9 or 10 o'clock. We go outside and it's dark. And so I was probably, I don't know, I was young, 20, 21, something. And it's dark outside and I offered to walk my tutor home. And I said, would you like me to walk you home? And she said, why would you walk me home? And I said, oh, it's dark outside. Do you want me to just make sure you get home okay? And she said, why would I not get home okay? And Well, I don't
Oh,
know. No reason, but just, do you need help getting home, or do you want me to walk you home? And she said, you're trying to go to my home? And I'm like, oh no. And so,
oops.
oh, no, no, no. I just want to make sure you get home safe. And she's like, why would I not get home safe? Why do you want to know where
Wow.
I live? And so, complete blunder. And she thought I was making some move on her. And that was
Yes.
absolutely not my intention at all. I was just trying to make sure she got home safely. And
Right.
it struck me like, oh, people in Korea don't think about safety like that because it's such a safe country.
Wow.
And so, to answer your question, once you kind of have that experience, you kind of think, wow, how incredible would it be to live in a society where you didn't have to worry about street safety, where the whole concept of walking someone home is just completely ridiculous. And so
Wow.
I remember being very jealous and envious that they didn't have to think of that concept. I mean, how beautiful is that?
That is really beautiful. I mean, I was surprised with you as you told that story. Um, what if conversations with people from other cultures, like beside about maybe how you grew up or the country that we're in, how have those conversations actually, what have they revealed to you about yourself?
A lot of things. It's very counterintuitive, but the best way to learn about your country is to leave it. And the best way to learn about yourself is to meet others. And it's counterintuitive. If I'm trying to become an expert in the United States, why would going to another country help? I mean, this kind of addresses your last question too about what about the situation that was a situation where I made a fool of myself and really became envious of Korea and its society. There's another story, again, embarrassing, but I remember I was in Togo, which is a small country in West Africa, and I had hired a tour guide for a few days to show me around. And he was about my age, and I just like immediately gelled with this guy. Like we were about the same age, both kind of young, ambitious, getting ready to start their lives, excited about the life to come before us. And we talked for days. I mean, 8 hours a day, just chatting. And I felt so similar to him in so many ways.
Mm.
And I had asked him 1,000 questions, but one particular question, I made a mistake and was rude. I asked him what was his favorite movie. And he kind of thought about it and he said, The Avengers. And I said, okay, what what about your favorite local movie? What's your favorite Togolese movie? And he thought for a second and he said, I don't think we have any Togolese movies. And I said, really? What do you mean? I said, what do you watch when you go to the movie theaters? And he sat there and said, I don't think we have a movie theater in Togo. And he said, I don't think anyone could afford to go. And it was just like, oh, I felt so bad. Like that was not my intention to sound elitist or to sound
Mm-hmm.
rich or something. I was
Mm-hmm.
genuinely just interested in it. And that's me in Korea. I said something ignorant and I offended someone, I'm sure, and I learned something. Here, I also said something kind of offensive and came
Mm-hmm.
across as an elitist, rich American. But just the fact that a country wouldn't have a movie theater, I had never even conceptualized of a nation that could be like that. And so when you go back and see that any small town in America has a movie theater and you just think, wow, like how grateful. And that's just an incredible thing that I had never thought to think of. I should be so grateful for having a movie theater in my hometown. I never thought about that. And here I was offending someone because I just completely assumed that
Mm-hmm.
countries made movies and countries had movie theaters. And
Wow.
at that time, they had never made a movie and there was no movie theater in the entire country.
Yeah. Hmm. The things we take for granted. But that
Exactly.
does, traveling abroad definitely gives you different lenses to look at the world with. Talking about traveling abroad. So I know that you were in the tech industry, COVID hit. Instead of just staying in an apartment during COVID and after and just probably working from home, take us back to that decision when you went, I'm going to be working from home. I might as well make home the world. How did you get there? And help us understand the ingenuity and maybe the courage that it took to go out and just pack a bag and leave.
I don't know if it took much courage, but maybe just curiosity. I remember that in Silicon Valley, I live in San Jose, California. At that time, I was living in Northern California, being a tech nerd. And I read this statistic. And this was back in 2017 after the election. And I read a stat just in the local news or something that said that about half of Americans voted for Trump, about half of Americans lived in a house with a gun, and about a third of Americans thought that the Adam and Eve story was literal historic truth. And I'm not talking politics here. I'm just saying from San Jose's perspective, that is not the percentages that I was surrounded by. I remember reading that and then thinking like, are 50% of the people that I interact with on a daily basis at work, my friends in San Jose, California, are they Trump voters or do they have guns? And I just thought, no, like that's not the bubble that I was in. Mm-hmm. And again, this is not driven from any political view. I remember thinking like, oh, I had spent time in Korea before and I had studied abroad in India in college. And here I was out of touch with my own country. I was living in a very specific bubble. And so I kind of stewed on that. Those thoughts percolated with me for 3 years and COVID happened. And when my job went remote, I said, okay, this is my chance. Got rid of my apartment, sold all my things, packed up my car, and I moved to North Dakota. And in the next 18 or so months, I started in North Dakota and ended in Biloxi, Mississippi. And again, no political agenda, not trying to convince anyone. It had nothing to do with politics. It was just, there's another part of my country that I'm out of touch with. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my entire life.
I want to delve a little bit more into you having that realization. And instead of feeling right, like, oh, well, my bubble's the best bubble, you got curious and you went, I'm going to call this courageous curiosity. Like, I think it was courageous to go and put yourself in the middle of states you knew nothing about. I think so many people would just go, oh, I know my bubble's safe, my bubble's right. And instead you went, like, why instead of saying, wow, I'm right and they're wrong, or those half or whatever, what do you think it is, maybe from growing up, maybe examples you've had, what was it that made you choose to be curious about what you didn't know instead of maybe being judgmental about it?
I don't know exactly. I'm not sure what it is. My first thought when I first read that statistic was embarrassment. And I felt embarrassed because by that point, I lived in India and I had been in Korea. And I thought of myself as a very curious and worldly person. And yet here I am out of touch with my own countrymen and women. And it just didn't gel with what I thought about myself and about my bubble. San Jose is very diverse, lots of people from all around the world. And so in San Jose, you'll frequently hear, I love the diversity here. I love the people are from everywhere, which is true. But it's a particular bubble. You're not getting many people on the different political side or from other walks of life. Everyone is involved in tech. So yes, it's diverse in a certain way, but in another way, actually, it's not. I kind of thought of myself as someone who spent a lot of time in other cultures, and here I am not understanding my own. I think it was a bit of shame, a bit of embarrassment. Like, how am I so out of touch? How have I holed myself up in this one particular bubble? And the other thing is, I don't know that my bubble in California is correct. Maybe in some parts it is, maybe in some parts it's not. I had been humbled enough times in India and Korea to know that I'm sure that I have beliefs that are wrong. And of course I do and did. So I never thought I know I'm right or anything like that. So I wanted to kick it off and say, I'm going to go to a new place and meet different types of people and see how we're similar and how we're different. And the purpose was to learn. I'm not trying to evangelize in any way. There was no political feelings to it, really. But I don't know many farmers in San Jose, California. Let's go to a farming town. Let's go meet people and see what they're like and how are we similar and how are we different.
So you go to a farming town, just keep going to the same cafe or whatever every day. Walk us through then how you started these conversations.
Yeah. I mean, 9 to 5, I'm still have my same tech job. So, I wasn't a tourist. I was during the day, I'm working. But maybe before work, I would join a gym and go to the gym. And after work, I would go to a few restaurants and try to become a regular there. I mean, of course I'm not, but in each place I would stay for between 4 and 8 weeks usually. Okay. So a decent amount of time, but of course I'm not a local by any means. Yeah. But if you see the same person at the gym a few times, or you see the same person at your butcher shop or bakery where you buy bread, eventually after you see him a few times, people start talking, especially in small towns. Everyone's curious. And when you approach it with a curious mind, like, hey, I'm new here. Tell me what are the great things to do. Tell me about what I should do this weekend. And people open up and people are happy to talk about their communities. And, let me tell you about this is a hidden gem, or, this is a park you should go to or something. And people are always happy to talk about their home. And so when you approach it in a very curious way, they're happy to talk. You talk to the same person a few times. I remember just, hey, like, I've had such a good time talking to you. Next week, do you want to go get lunch or go get coffee or something? And people were so, sure, of course. And those conversations.
Okay, wait, let's stop there. Because I want our listeners to be able to, like, if they don't have these skills, I want them to develop them. So let's say I'm the local and we just had a little conversation. I'm like, oh, you got to go to my favorite flower garden, and this is a really cool museum that visitors love. And then you say, hey, I enjoy talking to you. Let's hang out next week. And I go, yeah, that sounds cool. How do you get from that exchange to locking in a time, locking it in, and making sure it happens? Because people a lot of times go, oh, yeah, I'd love to meet up sometime. And then you never see them again. So help us know how to take a relationship to the next level, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I think if you just say like, oh, it's been so great to talk to you, and you mentioned your favorite restaurant wherever, let's go there sometime and you can show me what to order. And then they say, sure, that sounds great. And then, the benefit of this is these are usually smaller towns. This would be very difficult in San Jose. But in a smaller town in North Dakota or in Mississippi or something, I think it was people are friendly, A, but B, maybe smaller town.
What was the percentage of people that would say, yeah, cool, or that would say, oh, yeah, I'm really busy, I'll get back to you, or something? Like, did you have a high percentage of people saying yes?
I'm trying to think if anyone said no. I mean, I'm not saying all plans always matriculated and actually happened. Oh, maybe we couldn't do it, or I have a meeting at that time. Oh, they have to work late that day. But I think almost everyone would say, yeah, that sounds nice. And it could be something silly. I remember once I had a favorite bakery in Bismarck, North Dakota, and they said, I was talking to the same person who was the owner, and her husband had the same name as me. And so just a random connection, something like that. And she said something like, oh, me and my husband are going to be at this barbecue. I don't remember if it was a fundraiser or something at the local zoo. Come by and stop by. And I just went and I met them there, and then they introduced me to their friends and got to have some great conversations and kind of blend in with the locals and ask some questions. And it was fantastic.
Wow. I love that. I know that you throughout these travels that you were a dedicated journalist. So you would, after meeting people, so if you would journal. Am I right on that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever like go back now and read them?
I do, yeah.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
when you pick them up, what do you notice about yourself? What do you notice when you go back and read your journals from this very courageously curious time and these amazing conversations you had with strangers?
calling me a journalist is too kind. I was not a journalist, but I did document kind of, I went here, I talked to this person. It's not beautiful language. It's not artistic writing. It's just kind of documenting what was I doing. And when there was kind of an epiphany moment or something special, I would write it down. So it was cool to see, to reflect on those experiences. I've kind of taken some of my favorite epiphany moments and rewrote them in a more beautiful way. And I have a Substack where I just post some of these as little essays, moments that define me while traveling, something like that. Sometimes in your journals, you're writing went to this restaurant or had a elk burger for the first time or something, which is fun. But
I love that you have that documented. Like you can always look back and remember when.
Yeah.
Has been like writing and keeping a journal, is that something you've done most of your life?
Not really. I mean, I'm a data analyst, so I work in numbers all day. I'm a total dork with many of the other people in the Bay Area.
Okay,
but I
fair.
have kind of had a thing where when I'm traveling, take some notes, and it could be a journal. It could be notes on your iPhone. I mean, it doesn't have to be something sophisticated, but like when there is some moment that kind of shocked you or changed you in some way, a moment that you want to remember.
Yeah.
I always just tried to write it down.
Sure. Super smart. Let's turn this a little bit to talking about belonging, like specifically. Was there a time you traveled that you felt like you did not belong?
Not really. Obviously, in many places, I'm not a local. It's very clear that I'm not a local. But I think people are in general are pretty nice when you kind of say up front, like, oh, I'd love to learn about what it's like to live here or meet you or talk to you or buy you a cup of coffee or just take a walk in the park or something. I went to towns that are totally different than any place I've known. I've stood out. People have said, what's the deal with your accent? I've had that all the time, but I never felt like people were being mean. Am I different? Sure. But I never felt like I couldn't belong. I couldn't have a conversation. I couldn't have lunch with people. I never felt like that.
It sounds like you have a really solid feel of belonging to yourself. Like you belong anywhere you go because you take yourself with you, right? Where do you feel like you felt like that your whole life? Or when did that sense of belonging to self, therefore I can belong anywhere I go, where do you think that was cultivated from in your earlier life?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think when you grow up close to, my family grew up close to the border in Mexico. So, when people were talking about international things, it never really felt that far. That's a 45-minute drive. Tucson is about half white, half Hispanic. I never thought people of a different race or a different country. If you're from Mexico, it didn't feel like some far away place. A lot of people drive down there to go there for dinner. I mean, it's not a big thing. I remember having friends from different, their parents were immigrants from different places. So I never remember, if we go to this friend's house, we're going to eat Iranian food. If we go to this guy's house, we're going to eat Indian food. I mean, it never really felt like we're all friends. We all go to the same high school. So maybe, part of my childhood is just there was a lot of people from different parts of the country, the world, that spoke different languages at home. And I just never really thought much of it. I'm sure that helped. I think when you approach it and you come without a sense of evangelizing or Just my curiosity is there. I don't have any prejudice. I'm just trying to learn, just trying to meet people. I'm happy to share stories about my life if they're interested. I'm just happy to be there and happy to listen. I think people are receptive to that, and they like to tell stories about their home, their community, their family. And so if you show up just curious, most people are going to respond like, oh, yeah, I'd love to talk about that with you.
Wow. So it sounds to me like you're creating, in the Belonging podcast terms, that you're creating belonging for people by seeing the unique gifts that they're bringing to the world. Who are you? And tell me your stories. That to me sounds like a really beautiful way to offer belonging. I don't know that you've ever thought of it that way, but I would say you're definitely a creator of belonging.
I think sometimes, specifically about belonging, I think sometimes people think their first thought is if they're from a different political party, if they're from a different state, I couldn't belong with them. They're different than me. Mm-hmm. Either I'm discriminating against them or, they would probably discriminate against me. And I think that's kind of the first reaction. In San Jose, again, a very specific bubble, people say the most absurd things. Oh, I would never go to the South because they wouldn't accept me as a Californian.
Yeah.
That's just not true. I think that's a self-inflicted wound. They don't even want to try because they just assume that people are going to discriminate against them. And I'm sure there's mean people everywhere, but that I think is a barrier in our own heads that we just couldn't get along. I'm a tech worker. I would have nothing to talk to a farmer about. And I just think that's just wrong. And I think people have their space, they think that they couldn't belong in some other space because of some difference. I'm sure that exists in some degree, but I think a lot of that is self-imposed. We don't even try to belong in other spaces because we just assume that they wouldn't respond well because I voted this way or because I look this way or because I'm from this place. And that was just not my experience at all. And I think people should give it a try.
Why don't more people talk to each other and talk to people that they're unfamiliar with? What do you think holds us back?
I think in part we place these barriers because it's easier to think of all people of the other party as dumb, or people on the flyover states are like this, the coastal elites are like that. I think it's very easy to put people in boxes, and that's not just an American problem. People around the world put other people in boxes. I think it's easy.
Why do you think we do that?
It's easy to do that. It's very simple to just think everyone who voted for Kamala is a socialist and everyone who voted for Trump is a fascist. It's very simple to put people into boxes like that. If you're on the West Coast, you're an elitist lib, and if you're a flyover, you're an ignorant farmer or whatever. You hear this type of language all the time, and it's too confusing. It's too difficult to realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of nuance in these questions. And there's people in California that are not like that, and people that are in, there's all types of people everywhere. And so I think it's
of being human.
Yeah, I think it's simple to put a person in a box. And I don't like that, obviously. I found so many counterexamples in California, in the Bay, left and right. And so I'm just not really interested in those things anymore. Once you see enough counterexamples, you just think that's not really the case. And one of the biggest takeaways from my digital nomad trip in America was I left an incredible optimist. And whenever you turn on the news, you hear lots of things about this country is hopelessly divided and we're on the brink of civil war and all these type of extravagant statements like that. And that was just not my experience at all. I think if you ask people very binary questions about Do you like candidate A or B? Do you like Obamacare? Yes or no? Do you want to build a wall? Yes or no? If you give people a binary type question like that, then they come out 50-50, and then people on the news say, aha, 50-50 shows division. Mm-hmm. But if you ask deeper questions to people, don't ask about wall or not. Say, paint me a picture about what you think a fair immigration policy would be. Paint me a picture of what you would like the future of the United States to look like. Paint me a picture about what healthcare sounds fair to you. And if you remove the triggering language, people paint pictures that are very similar. And I just was so touched when people would paint that picture for me, and I would listen to it and think, I think a Californian would say that. I mean, that sounds pretty close to what I would hear in the West Coast. And so I left feeling like, yes, America's got some issues, we have problems, but the moral bedrock, the foundation, the ethical foundation, the moral compass of an American that's in the rural part, the urban part, the left, the right, I was so shocked and pleasantly shocked how similar I really felt Americans were, despite being in very different bubbles, that I really do think we can figure this out, and we're not that different.
That's a great challenge to all of us. I think you're right. I think it's easy to be in the box or the bubble. It's just easier. It takes a lot more effort to stop and take a breath and look and say, wow, let's find our similarities, find what we both care about deeply. And I'm really grateful that you're really shining a light on that to us today, because I know I can be better at it. Spending so much time thinking about belonging, you see how much it hurts people when they don't belong. And yet we so quickly default to us and them. And so I really love this conversation. You just make it so simple. Like, I love your prompt of paint me a picture. What does it look like? I'm going to use that this week. I love that. Okay. So reading through your Substack and some of your, what the work I could get my hands on, there was a few words that kind of kept coming to me through your writings and through your epiphanies. And so here's what I'd like to do. Let's try this. There's 4 words. Well, 5. One of them is 2 words. I just want to say the word, and I want you to tell me what that word means to you, or if a story comes up about that word. And let's see if this works. I haven't tried this before in a podcast. So you ready?
Sure.
Okay. The first word is returning.
I don't think I have a specific memory that goes with that, but I think it's leaving your bubble and coming back to a bubble. You have fresh eyes. And so whenever you go somewhere and then when you come back, you don't see it in the same way. That's why people always talk about there's culture shock when you leave and there's reverse culture shock when you come back. I think it's related to the when you come back part. How do you see the world a little bit different?
Okay. So maybe we don't truly ever return to the same place because we're a different person now, or a different thinking person, different knowing person. Okay. Second word, remembering.
I think listening to other people's stories helps you. I'll tell an example about that. I remember once I met this guy in Kenya. I have a Substack about this one. I was in Kenya and I actually didn't know him. We were meeting for the first time, but he was a friend of a friend. And so we were both IT nerds. And so we went out to lunch, and I remember we were sitting there talking and totally vibing well, both young professionals, both in IT. He was a local Kenyan, and he was telling me about something, and then he said that he recently had gotten married. And I said, oh, that's so great. Congratulations to you. And he said something like, yeah, it's beautiful, but it was really hard. And I said, why was it hard? And he said, I'm Kikuyu and she's from the Luo tribe, so you can imagine how difficult that would be. And I just looked at him and said, like, I'm sorry, I actually don't know what that means. And it was a simultaneous epiphany. I was thinking, how in the world does he think that I would know what that means?
Yeah.
And he was having the epiphany of like, oh my gosh, I've never met a person who didn't understand the cultural ramifications of a Kikuyu tribes member marrying a Luo tribes member. And so we had this like simultaneous epiphany. And then he was explaining to me like, oh, this tribe votes in a politically different, and one's from the east, one's from the west, and that causes different. And he's explaining this, and you can tell as he's explaining it to me, he's never articulated this in his entire life. It's just so embedded in the culture to understand that those are two tribes that have political differences. And so he's explaining something like I'm a child. I mean, he wasn't being condescending, but like he had never articulated this. Mm-hmm. And so it just, having him tell a story, something simple like I got married, I learned a lot about the country, and he also learned about what is common knowledge. The definition of common knowledge is a relative statement. For me, never met anyone who's ever known anything about those two tribes having conflicts. And for him, he had never met a person. Yeah. He had never met a person who could even conceptualize that they didn't understand how difficult that union would be. And so those types of moments are really special to me because I learn a lot. They learn a lot. Simultaneous epiphany. I mean,
I
nothing
love that.
better.
Yeah. Thank you for remembering that for us. What a great story. There's so many things in that story that bear some deep thinking about. Okay, word number 3, recognizing.
I think this is kind of related to my feelings about Korea or Togo. It's great to recognize the beauty of other countries. Wow, a country of 53 million people in South Korea who have never thought about walking home in fear. It's good to recognize that other countries are like that, and maybe America should emulate that a little bit better. What can we learn from the Koreans so that we can have safer streets for our people? Mm-hmm. To recognize that, I think, is important. Mm-hmm. And then to also recognize the great things that we have about the country, to just say like, oh, I had never considered when I go to the movies that I was speaking from a position of privilege, but I am, and I should be more grateful. I never think about it, but when I go see a movie, that is a source of privilege that I should take seriously and be thankful for. So I think recognizing where we can go societally and the good things about our society, take a second to recognize that and enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, number 4 sort of piggybacks on number 3, becoming recognizable.
I guess it's related to my earlier statement too. I hope I'm not repeating myself, but just the, when you go to a new place, sometimes people feel invisible and thus they don't belong in some way. But when you go to a store and people know you by name and wave to you, hey, good to see you again, you become a recognizable place. It makes you feel like you do belong. You're not an other. And so I don't like it when we otherize people. I mean, I think we do that all the time. And I don't like that. I think it's a type of prejudice. It's kind of offensive. But I think we do that for simplicity, like we said before. So when you go to a new town or go to a new school or anything and people recognize you, they kind of know your name, or if maybe not your name, they just recognize that you are here and you deserve to be here. I think that's, it makes you feel accepted and part of the community. And I mean, my advice to people is when they feel like they're not, don't be so afraid. People are not going to shut you out and kick you out. It's not like that. Go in with some curiosity and smile on your face, excited to learn. And most people in this country are very excited to share about themselves and their communities, and they're happy to have you. When I was in town and I had made friends, I used to always ask, what do you think it would be like if I decided to move here? They've only known me a few times from buying bread or buying something from their store. And, you build up a bit of a rapport and you kind of say, I like this place. What would it be like if I moved here? Yeah, like, welcome in. Every place I went, I asked that question, and every place said, yeah, sure.
Just putting yourself out there to be welcomed in is such a great example of belonging that you've given us. Just sort of, I'm going to even say assuming belonging. You're like, I want to be here and I want to, you're walking in with such an open heart where you're like, tell me about you. It's just such a great example of choosing to belong where you are, wherever that is. That's how I would summarize our time together today. Wesley, thank you for setting the stage for us to be able to be a little bit more courageous, to choose to connect with people who are not in our bubble so that we can learn about their bubble and we can expand. If there's one thing you want to leave the audience with today, what would that be?
I guess the last thing I would say is reject the ridicule culture that is prevalent in the United States now. It's not on left and right. Everyone kind of is ridiculing other people. There's a lot of shows on YouTube where they say stuff, the title of the show is "Watch this Trumper get destroyed by facts," or "Watch this lib." There's a lot of this type of content out, and it's popular and sometimes they're funny, but I would say we should reject that type of content. It's not productive, and even if that person did say something that absurd and that funny or whatever, when you are outside of your comfort zone, you also say ridiculous things. And I had to learn this when I got outside of my bubble. Now I'm offending people and I'm saying silly things. And so it's very easy to sit in the comfort of your own bubble with people that think like you and ridicule and laugh at and make fun of people that are different, that are stupid, that don't understand the social cues of your circle, and laugh at them. And that's become very cool. It's very comfortable to do that. And I recommend that everyone rejects that type of content because you kind of feel superior. How could they not know those things? But really, if I put you in a certain situation and I put a microphone in front of you and asked you to talk about what's your opinion of the Kikuyu and Luo, you would also look like a fool. And yes, how do I know that? Because I've been there and I've looked like a fool many, many times. And so I'm allergic to this type of content. I admit in other times I've laughed at those videos and thought they were funny, just as I laughed at the ski person and the tortilla guy. But that's not a good way. That's not a good thing to do. And so I hope when we see this type of content, these comedians, these YouTubers making fun of others, reject that paradigm.
Reject the ridicule. Fantastic note to leave on. Wesley, thank you so much for your time here today on the podcast. We really, really appreciate the depth of experience of your lifetime that you've brought and shared with us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
This has been another episode of the Belonging Podcast by Elev8 Villages. Generously underwritten by Deanna Laughlin. Thank you so much for making this podcast possible, Dee. And until next time, let's go out there and all build belonging together.